lots of successes, many different industries. Good has nothing to do with this third question. What's your biggest F up, and
Okay.
what you learned from it, Don?
Yeah, there's been a few for sure. Um, I'd say there's two that stand out. One, I was at the Quaker Oats company and I was in charge of on the Kibbles and Bits brand of adding a chicken piece to the product.
Yeah.
Again, sounds really small, but it was a huge deal. I provided incorrect direction to the plant, and it ended up costing us about $100,000. We had to scrap an entire product run.
Oh,
But at the time, Quaker was doing this thing called high performing organizations, which is if you make a mistake, you have to diagnose it, you have to tell people what you've learned, and try not to do it again. So that's what happened. As soon as I knew I effed up, I immediately analyzed the situation. I wrote it up, submitted it to my boss, went up to the division president. Yeah, they were not happy about the $100,000, but I actually ended up getting recognized for, admitting the mistake, and not more importantly, how do we avoid it in the future? So that was kind of early in my CPG career.
good.
Another one, which for your listeners, when they start to move up and they get into the politics of the organization, the second F up was I had spent more time, this was at Granger, I had spent more time managing down and leading my team than managing up.
Mm,
I was not as good at the politics up as I could have been. And it
mm,
ultimately resulted in me losing my job at the beginning of the 2010 recession, which was a horrible time to be out
yeah,
of work, which
yeah.
led me to Gartner, obviously, in the pivot. But that was something that, I think deep down I knew I needed to go, but I didn't play it as well as I could have. So the politics piece of it, which I thought I was good at, I wasn't good enough, and I missed it. I missed the signals, and it cost me my job at the end. And that, as you know, and as listeners will know, the higher you up in the organization, it's about relationships. It's not as much about performance. So the relationships, while I thought were strong, were not strong enough. So that was my kind of my later in career F up.
What'd you learn from that later in career F up?
The later in the career F up was really about you have to do both. You have to balance both. Now, we've all worked for managers who are good at managing up but not managing down. I did not want to be that.
Yep.
So I had not found the balance. So if I were to do this again, there would be a much more balanced approach to up and down. I was actually pretty good at across too. That wasn't the issue, it was up that I was
Yep.
having issues.
Oh, this is juicy D.
Oh, I I have some machinations, but Larry, you
You go, please go first.
all right. Okay, so brand nerds, you're gonna find yourself in close proximity to folks who are exceptional at the politics. They have a gift for it. They know how to manage up, and that is their primary concern. And as a result of managing up, and some of you brand nerds may actually be this way, and I'm not begrudging that at all. And by virtue of this extremely developed talent at managing and navigating the politics, you will be rewarded with more responsibility. You will be rewarded with the best projects, and you will also be rewarded with wonderful compensation. These are all things that accrue from being exceptional at politics. And you don't when you're that good at politics. To your point, Don, just tangentially, is that you don't necessarily need to be as good at managing down because you're so good at managing up. You're so good at managing up, and those who that do that. So
And D, I'm sorry, but dare I say there was a lot of people at Coca-Cola when the three of us were there that were really good at what you just described.
Oh, yes.
some of the best to have ever walked the planet. Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
Okay, that is a place where you could literally, for those that are the best at the politics, they could leave and join the United Nations and function just fine.
Yes.
You know, I speak the truth there.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's why you said what you said, Larry. All right,
Yeah.
so brand nerds, I got bad news for you. Because I was like Don, and Larry knows this, that I was like, it's just about the work. It's about the work and the people that I work with and the team doing the work. That's what it's about. If we get the results, we're all good. Wrong. That's wrong. That was wrong. And so I then began to shift and grow, albeit painful, and view politics a bit like you're in Washington right now. You're in the state of Washington, living in Seattle. It rains in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to live in Seattle, you best have an umbrella, a trench coat, and some goulashes.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to get wet. And in the corporate environment, this managing up is the equivalent of rain in Seattle. It happens. So unless you figure out your umbrella, your trench coat, your goulashes, you're going to get drenched.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to be pretty.
Nope.
And I have been drenched many, many times.
So I'm so glad Don brought this up. So I'm going
I
to share
am too.
something I haven't shared, Don, in our 100+ shows. I left Coca-Cola because I saw the landscape of people who did well. The people who did well were not the best at what DC said. They were far and away not the best people at their jobs. They were the best at politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am pride myself in a no BS. I'm a no BS guy. What you see is what you get. And I'm looking around me and going, this is not right for me. You know, I'm not going to be one who thrives in this. But I was really short-sighted, and that's what you do sometimes when you're younger, because what I should have done was at least not compromising myself, because I was one, I'm not compromising who I am.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I still could have played it much better and at least figured out my way for a lot longer, which would have taken me much further in my career when I did leave. And it was a huge mistake because I prided myself on not playing politics. What DC said is so true, Branders. If you're in any organization, and by the way, I'm in Silicon Valley, I've seen startups be this way. And Don, I know you know what I'm talking about because you cover them. Even small startups have incredible politics. Who's the, who knows the VC, like all that stuff. So no matter what, if you're in an organization with more than 2 people, it's going to have politics. And so you got to figure out how you can navigate it in a way that doesn't compromise yourself, but actually optimizes the best of who you are and your abilities. Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought this up, Don. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it was a hard lesson. There's actually, if you're familiar with Dune and Frank Herbert, there's a line in there: politics is the art of appearing completely open while concealing as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's a
great
favorite definition, but it's hard because Larry, I was like you. I did not want to compromise myself. I did not want to appear fake or inauthentic. But there's a price to pay, and I think that was part of the reason why I got out of being a manager, went back to being an individual contributor at Gartner, and I've had many opportunities to be manager or leader, and I've said no because I like being an individual contributor. I like having an impact, and I just had a bad taste on the politics side. So, like you said, it's a choice. You have to decide what's going to work for you, and in some cases it will, in some cases it won't.
And I just want to close with this. This is so big, D, and I'll throw it to you. Dare I say this? The 3 of us I know, DC, and the way you described yourself, Don, the people that work for us loved working for us. I was really good at managing down, and I thought that again, that would do really well. And that's, you still shouldn't compromise that, but you can do the other one as well. Go ahead, D.
Larry, you went where I was going, and then I've got a definition myself for politics, but where you're going about managing down, looking out for your team, you did the same thing, Don. I'm the same way. We're really protective of our team, making certain that they get the resources they need, that they're acknowledged, that they're rewarded for their work.
Protected.
Protected, right. Yeah. But here's the deal, brand nerds. When you do that and do not also play the political game,
Yep.
and you're moved out of the way primarily because of your inability to play politics, or someone simply is better than you, what then replaces you could be someone who is better at the politics and not necessarily interested in the team below, and the team suffers because you left and you did not protect them. So this is very important.
Yeah.
The very important, brand nerds. Second thing is, Don, can you give me that definition of politics again?
The art of appearing completely open while concealing as much as possible.
Wow. And what's the source of that?
This is Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune series.
Okay, Frank Herbert. Okay. So
Very cool.
I didn't know that Dune was a book. I didn't know it came from a book until I talked with my nephew, Larry's son, Jake.
Yeah.
Jake introduced me to that. I have another definition for politics, and it's one that is commonly known, although I don't know that it's connected to politics. And that is where two or more are gathered.
Yeah, right. Without question.
All right, Folayo, you have many accolades, many W's throughout your career. But we don't want to know about those in this question. In this question, we want to know your biggest F up on you, Folayo. You made the mistake. Your thinking was flawed. You thought it was going to work. It did not work. And then what you learned from it.
So without naming names, well, I should start by saying, like, just take your pick. Like, I fail a lot, but I kind of look at it because I'm always trying.
Right.
Like, so, but in times so I don't think that failing or effing up is that much of a problem, because if you are never, you are really playing it safe. So, but that's kind of the more kumbaya answer.
Yeah.
When I think about just a time in my career where it was like, oh, geez, wow. I worked on a partnership, and and short story long is I saw the revenue opportunity and decided that I would choose commerce over customer. And I created this partnership and I did all this stuff and we made all this content, and it tanked. And it was because I wasn't thinking about who was on the other side of this. I was thinking about how to reach my personal revenue or targets or goals, or how to make the sale, or how to say I worked with this brand. And I realized at that point, my big learning is not all money is good money, and not all money is the right money. And I think that failure or that F up has actually stretched into my life beyond work, is that if you are making moves without thinking about the end result, I've done this in terms of jobs or clients or whatever, where it's like, ugh, this was a money decision. This was a stupid decision. It actually made me kind of coin this phrase that my former coworkers hated, but it was, don't sacrifice dollars tomorrow for pennies today. And that's what I learned, is that you have to play the long game, even when it's harder. Now, that is a very fun phrase, and it's great to put on a whiteboard. When you're faced with it, it is a decision that you have to make actively, because again, it's not just a work decision, it's a life decision. There are so many times that I myself have faced this choice and been wooed by the shining lights, and then immediately just been like, oh Jesus, like, learn it. Like I like to not make the same mistake more than once. Like I make lots of mistakes, but I like to just make them the one time. This is the one that I think it's an exercise that has to consistently be worked and sharpened and just you got to do whatever the practice is to make sure that you're thinking about that end result and what you really want at the end of this. Because anytime that I haven't thought about, okay, so the day after this, does this get me closer or further to where I'm actually trying to be? So that's where my failures have come and continue to come sometimes. I'd love to be this, very elevated, I've moved past this failure. It's just not fact. So like it's a lesson that I learn regularly.
I think we all do to some degree, right? And I think what you're really saying is also that if you're have such zeal to get stuff now, and two things, aren't thinking of end result, like you said, Folayo, like what's my real objective here, which is if you do that, you have to take a breath and think, right?
Yeah.
You got to pause, right? And then if you do that, then having the patience to really be focused on the end result rather than what's the gleaming, shining object that you talked about that's there today.
Yeah. I was a preemie, so patience isn't really built into me, but
That's funny.
Ask my family, I'm not lying. Like I'm like, I don't like to wait. It's a problem. But I also think that, this is an interesting question because I think even beyond that, my choice in failures can also be a bit of a failure. Like I think even if I think of it would be better because I'm consistently trying. Like I said, I fail a lot because I try hard. But I think that another failure in that space is that, are you failing at the things that matter? Like failure, I saw somebody quoted, I don't remember who it was, but they said it's not failure, it's feedback. And so if sometimes I get my head wrapped up in like solving this problem that doesn't really matter to me, and I will figure out how to get it left, right, sound it. Like I'll fail, I'll fall, I'll do whatever. And sometimes even that is a distraction from the thing I might be too afraid to move forward into.
Right.
Like, this question got me thinking about fear of failure. And when the stakes are more personally low, I think there is less fear of failure. You're like, it's cool. I can face anything. But when you kind of dig deeper into the risk, are you failing in those directions as well, where the failure might hurt a little more, like hurt a little more of whether your ego, your pride, your ability to walk forward. I'd say that is an F up, in that sometimes there's the lack of, I don't know if it's bravery or like, I don't know, but like maybe there's the lack of fortitude to fail in the places that matter. And that in and of itself can be an F up.
That's interesting. Really putting yourself out there, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. Aaron, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting right now if you didn't have many dubs. But for this question, I'd like to know nothing of those W's. I want to understand from you your biggest F up and what you learned from it. And a big one, stanky, big danky one.
Wow. Gonna put me out there, right? Yeah, for me, the biggest, and this is hard because you always want to think that you've never done anything that could not be corrected, or you're otherwise cleaned up your own mess before it got to be a big one. But I mine would be as a young brand steward in retail, which I felt like coming up to where I was, I had a lot of knowledge. Maybe I wouldn't say cocky, but coming out of brand management in retail, felt like I knew what I was doing. Um, Two, I felt as though I had a pretty good portfolio of brands under my hood, and in the structure I was operating in, kind of knew what I was doing. But miscalculated and made an error with sort of in that capacity. I was working as a brand leader, but almost in a mini advertising agency, which in-house the large retailer had. And I'm being specific and not calling them out. But in the structure and the organization I was in, and you'll have an appreciation for this, brand nerds, when you go from a large brand or brand management company, and you come into retail, at least it was like that then, where the brand leaders are really running the show. In retail, not so.
Right.
The buyers,
the merchants are running the show.
the merchants or buyers run the show. And I'm giving you all this context for a reason. So I was still in the myriad of thinking that I was that and all that, and made a miscalculation in terms of one of in my portfolio brands that was presented and laid out for a large ad that was going to be going on. And retail is a churn. Do you see it's a churn. And I thought I had done my homework and laid this out in the portfolio for the ad to run through, and had not checked off with the lead buyer on one particular item that this was going to be a big deal. And they had actually changed it out and swapped it out for another one. And this was going to be a national ad. And net of it is, ran the wrong ad, had a huge volume implications to it. And I was lead for the category, and it was on me as running it, and had to answer to the lead buyer and the buyer VP on that when this came through, and basically admit that it was on me. And so that was the biggest one. And that volume implications, once the ad had run and couldn't be pulled, was very high. So that was the big one. So what I learned from it was, you have to sometimes take off that arrogance and understand the environment you're operating in, and also recognize the channels of communication, and understand, it's not always about what you know, but understanding, make sure that you're validating your sources and before you let things go. So it was huge.
Ooh, Dee, this is a good one.
Oh, this is such a good one.
This is such a good. Aaron, thanks for sharing that, by the way.
Oh,
because
thank you.
I was feeling your pain, and that's what we ask folks to do, to be vulnerable in that sense. So thank you for sharing that, because there's a lot to learn from for a lot of folks. And I think the two things I smell that you were hit with is, and by the way, I was way worse than you in my career. Like, I thought I knew everything in my 30s, coming off of, and you feel like you're sort of bulletproof, and, you were now in an environment, like you said, that's not marketing or brand centric, that's merch centric. And you feel like, this is my deal. It's advertising. I know what to do. And so you sort of realize that the epicenter of this company was not marketing. That's the big thing. And then two, because it's not marketing, I best check this off with the folks who are really running the show, being the merch and buyers, right? And so, you thought you had it all figured out, and that's such a great learning. I'm sure you didn't do anything like that again.
Oh no, I learned the hard way, and it was beyond a tongue lashing to all the authorities. I never repeated that again. Actually, the buyers became my best my best business friend at the time. But I gained a greater appreciation also from the merchant side, and I learned it even better because I knew the marketing piece. But that was another learning for me.
I got two things. I'm gonna go back to the Constitution. So when our country was being founded, the reason why we talk about John Hancock and our Declaration of Independence is because he signed his name the largest. That's why John Hancock, when we say put your John Hancock on it, everybody else just signed regular, but John Hancock was like John Hancock. So this was his way of signaling, I want the UK to understand I'm not scarred. We are freeing ourselves of you all. There's another thing that it's either him or I believe it's Thomas Jefferson. They had a quote, and the quote was, "Nothing so concentrates the mind as the prospect of being hanged." Because that's what was going to happen to these brothers. They were going to be hanged. All right. So let me come back to you in this mistake. Did you think that you had possibly put yourself in position to be fired? Did you think this was a fireable offense?
At the time, no. But once the magnitude of the volume and the dollars associated with it, not that I didn't think that through, I realized it. I did think it was at that point.
At that point.
You had a couple sleepless nights, it sounds like.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this is so important. I don't think we've had this one before, LT. So Aaron, help the brand nerds understand what you were doing at a time when you thought, this is pretty big. Like the sales implications here are large. I could be fired. What were you doing once you had that epiphany?
What I was doing was, once I went through just the implications of that, I was not, initially I was thinking, how can I make this right? And then once I realized it was no turning back, what I was taking a position was, because for me, I wanted to be defending, my decision and choice around from the marketing side of why it made sense. But I quickly had to pivot to understanding this was bigger than just the marketing side of it. This had business implications. Understanding I'm a business person, I'm a marketer first, but I have an advanced business degree. I had to go to that, and that had to take the scrutiny. I took scrutiny above that and be accountable. So the evolution there, maybe it was really just being able to kind of be a smart, not only a brand steward, but a better business person, and be willing to kind of own up to that, and then have that conversation, and really be able to move forward from that point.
Got it.
Really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Aaron. You've had many successes over the course of your career. Platitudes, flowers, congratulations. We don't want to know about any of those with this third question. Not a one. We want to know about the L's. What's your biggest F up? And importantly, what did you learn from it, Lulite?
Well, there's many. But since this is not an interview, I won't convert it into a positive.
Please don't.
Oh no, we wouldn't let you do that.
I would always do that in interviews. Okay, what's the con? Okay, then how can I get the positive?
As my daughters have taught me, Lulite, sorry to cut you off. This ain't that. So
I know.
give it to us real.
So I'm just gonna give it to you raw. And I don't think I actually admitted this to anyone either. I had a manager, and we were going through a number of changes in the projects that we're doing. We were, and there was a lot of frustration because there's a lot of transition, a lot of different leadership changes around the department, different ideas of what roles and what things should be priority. And, there's a lot of changes happening, and meetings that you weren't involved in, or you're supposed to be involved in, being, like that whole kind of office politics. that was kind of coming about. And I was at such a high level of frustration that I would basically, anything that would irritate me, I would believe that he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did is I blamed him for changing a report when I did it myself.
Wow.
And I blasted him on email. I copied everyone and their mother on it. I wrote this whole thing, because and so the F up wasn't the fact that, oh, I didn't realize that he didn't touch the report. The bigger mess up here was that it was an assumption. I just assumed he would behave exactly how he's always showed me that he would behave, or that whatever or I guess based off of my perception, right, of what was going on. And maybe to this day, I just didn't know the whole picture, right? And I've grown and learned so much since this incident, but I think the bigger part was I just assumed, because I was in a frustrated emotional state, and because I'm also I can suppress my frustrations till kind of blow a can. And I normally get my numbers right. I cross my T's, dot my I's. And when I'm going after you, it's I feel very vindicated and validated. Like, you deserved it. I'll convince myself you deserved it. And then I will you should have seen that email. You should have seen it. I had people on there who had to go back, pull the reports to see who logged in and who didn't log in. It was to that point. And just to all find out he never logged into that report.
Wow.
And it was senior people. It was bad. It was bad.
Wow.
And so what I learned, and it took me a couple years to learn it. So for one, it was one I messed up on assuming. But two, what I really learned out of that is just to give grace. You never know what people are going through. You never know what the intent is. And just always understanding that whatever's for you is for you. Whatever you need to learn from it, it's in your path. The universe has sent it to you in your path for you to be able to learn that. It's you can't be the top talent, perfect person all the time. Someone may disagree with you, and someone may not like you for good reasons or not good reasons, but it doesn't really matter. It's there to kind of actually evolve you. They're just there to be a mirror for the places where you need to kind of grow and evolve. And that evolution is painful. So you have to make mistakes in order to evolve. You have to, fall short in order to kind of see where you're falling short. So that's kind of the place, I think. So it ended up being one of I was so embarrassed, embarrassed. And it took me some years to really understand the full lesson. Not just the surface lesson, but the full lesson of all of it. Yeah. So.
Lulite, that's honestly one of the best. We have biggest F ups that we put back out, and this is one of the best ones we've had in the 150 plus. Because of the rawness that you said and the honesty of it, and most importantly, what you said is the learning, the give grace part, and these are the kind of things sometimes in reflection that you can't see at the time, and you put the context to it. You're frustrated, and all these things were going on, and it's taken me a long time, quite honestly. I think of the fights I picked, especially back in our Coca-Cola days, when you sort of felt like if you didn't fight, you were going to get run over. And so, my natural reaction as a New Yorker is I ain't getting run over, so I'm fighting. And so there were times I picked fights when it was stupid. It wasn't smart. And you're better served to really realize when you do have to, quote unquote, fight back, versus letting, as you said, let the universe take care of what happens going forward, rather than you be the one who infiltrates the vindictiveness or whatever needs to happen. Let the universe take care of it. I'm blown away by this.
And Larry, it's kind of like the bullies become the bully.
Right.
It's
Right.
I'm feeling bullied, and I'm feeling like I'm protecting my colleagues, right? By being this voice or being this pushback. And all the while it converted into me being, and I couldn't see at the time because I really convince myself, no, you're the one on the white horse. You're
Right.
on the white horse, Lulite. Keep going, keep doing it, keep fighting, And I actually tanked my immune system because of that.
Wow.
So it's like, it's like, that's the kind of, I think when I say the universe, and I also say like your body, your experiences will allow you to know when you're misaligned, when you're either fighting too hard and or not allowing things to kind of flow and take its rightful process, So you can't rush the process. You have to learn. You have to learn how to be humble, and also just keep reminding yourself about vulnerability. It's just a program, like you said. You're a New Yorker. You're trying to survive, and you kind of get into the fight or flight mode, and that's not the place we're supposed to be in. We're supposed to get back aligned, get grounded, and reevaluate, where we are, and that's kind of like how we can learn and grow.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you
So,
have anything to add?
None. Quick comment, and then I'm going to pass the rock to Larry. Two things. You said earlier you don't like conflict, Lily.
No.
And then you said you suppress.
Right.
But then when it comes out, we getting ready to get it popping when it comes out.
Brand nerds, thanks for listening to Brands, Beats, and Bytes. The executive producers are Jeff Shirley, Daryl D.C. Cobbin, Larry Taman, Haley Cobbin, Jay Tate, and Tom Dioro.
The Podfather.
That is he. And if you do like this podcast, please subscribe and share. And for those on Apple Podcasts, if you are so inclined, we love those excellent reviews. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to next time, where we will have more insightful and enlightening talk about marketing.